Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Vince Greco, and I am the Assistant Vice President of Philanthropic Partnerships for the U.S. Air Force Academy Association and Foundation. I want to begin by thanking you for being a SABA Society member. Your support of the U.S. Air Force Academy bolsters many programs that complement each of the Academy's missions. You play an important role in forging leaders of character who are motivated to a lifetime of service and develop to lead our U.S. Air Force and Space Force. My guest today is Rod Little, USAFA Class of 1992. Rod is President and Chief Executive Officer of Edgewell Personal Care. He has more than 20 years of global experience in consumer goods organizations, significant public company experience, and strong track record of driving results. He's a board of director for the Air Force Academy Foundation, and we have invited him to speak with us today. Rod, welcome to the SABA Society podcast, and thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Vince. Always good to see you and be with you.
Which brings up an interesting story. So Rod and I were introduced, 7 or 8 years ago. I came out to New Canaan here in Connecticut. I went to a little coffee shop, got off the train, and Rod was sitting there waiting for me with a stack of Checkpoint magazines. And he said, "Vince, what took you so long?" You remember that?
I do.
And look at where we are 7 years later. I appreciate all you've done for our school and hosting us in this beautiful building today, Rod. It's really something else.
Thank you, Vince. Always good to see you and be with you.
So let's start this way. You and I are similar in age. I'm a little bit older. I'll admit that. But you graduated in 1992. So back in, 88, 87, you didn't have a cell phone, or if you did, it was a brick this big. And you decided to go to the Air Force Academy. Why? What drew you to the Air Force Academy way back then?
It was a different time. Not only no cell phones, no computers. We had the floppy drives in the computers to try to figure out how to get things to work in those days. Look, I grew up in Kansas, but my mother's family is from Colorado, so Colorado was very familiar to me as a geographic location. No one in my family had been in the military, so I was the first person that contemplated it. I looked at the Air Force Academy as, first and foremost, a good academic experience. When I looked at the range of options that I was considering at that time, there was no Common App where you were firing off 15 or 20 applications, right? It was real hard work at that time to apply somewhere. So I had a couple of options. It was my best academic option. The more I looked into the Air Force Academy, though, I was drawn in by the service component. I was drawn in by what looked like a very competitive environment, which at the time I was into sports. That appealed to me. I didn't qualify, though, initially. I was a Falcon Foundation scholar and went down to New Mexico Military Institute for a year, primarily because I didn't have a foreign language in my high school times. And so I went down to NEMI, spent a year down there. There were 15, 20 other Falcon Foundation students to all three service academies at the time. Created an interesting bond with some of those guys, learned a lot, grew a lot in that first year away from home, and then had the good fortune to join into the class of 92 that came in the summer of 88.
Wow. When you got to the academy, was there ever a time or a point and you got to those footprints and you started going up the ramp and you thought, what the heck am I doing?
I did not, actually. I had committed to myself when I made the decision to go, actually when I went down to New Mexico, but certainly when I walked up the ramp, that I was essentially, my mindset was I'm writing off the next 4 years of my life.
Right.
All my friends were going to normal schools, having a good time. And I just had told myself, I'm parking the next 4 years. And if I have one good day, that's one more than I expect. I set my expectations very low at a time, frankly, when I shouldn't have done that. But that was my mindset, that I was just going to go for 4 years, and no matter what happened, I was not leaving. There was no scenario where I was going to leave.
Did you have some impactful moments there, things that have brought you full circle to where you are today as the CEO and president of a very powerful company?
You know, from the moment I got there, um, I felt like I could do the physical things. One of the gifts that I guess I was born with or given along the way is I have a good memory and I can memorize stuff very quickly. I'm not photographic, but a lot of that first B summer is around memorizing things and having good memory recall. That came easy to me. So the physical stuff was fine. I had the memory recall. The thing I was most concerned about at the time is, could I hang with the other people around me academically?
Sure.
Because you see all the test score averages and everything. And I remember there was this kid there, I won't use his name, but he was from the High School of Mathematics and Sciences from Philadelphia.
Wow.
And here I am, just a kid from the middle of Kansas saying, well, how do I hang with that academically? They ended up not being a problem, right? And in terms of kind of once you get going. But my biggest concern was not that first summer and could I make it, it was more around the academics. But I remember really migrating to a strong cohort of people that I was there with. We were all in it together. And one of the things, I'm a fairly social person.
Sure.
I really liked the team aspect
Right.
that came together. It was us versus them very quickly in a small group dynamic, where them was the 3, 2, and firsties, degrees that were at the time training us and putting us through the paces. One of the earliest things I remember it was driven home to me that I took away very early was the team matters, how important the team is. And that first summer, the cadre was all about going for the weakest link,
Right.
highlighting the weakest link, not to be mean to that person, but to see how the group responded around it. Did the group rally around that person and help build them up and bring them along, or did the group just let that person falter?
Sure.
And that happened every day, right? They would go for the weakest link and you would rally around that person. Sometimes you were that person, right? And people would rally around you. That creates real enduring memories around the importance of teamwork and hanging tight together in tough times.
It's funny that you mentioned teamwork and that team aspect you learned at the academy. Well, I look around this corporate headquarters and I see a lot of teamwork. Has that really helped you at every step of your career, thinking back to that teamwork and that cadre at the academy?
Yeah, it has. In fact, the thing I think, if people in my company were to talk to you and say, hey, what do we think about him? What is he known for? We used to use the word colleagues here to refer to each other. We now use the word teammates.
Wow.
And when I was back at the foundation meeting last weekend and heard the superintendent talking about the different people around, teammates, it's the same language. I didn't intentionally go for that of, hey, I want to bring something from the Air Force Academy here, but it's just kind of the way I've thought. The other thing is, I think people matter. People are your most important asset. Forget the brands that we sell, the planes, the satellites in the sky that the Air Force counts on. At the end of the day, if you have a highly motivated team that feels like their leadership supports them, has their back when times are tough, but also gets out of their way and lets them thrive and put their very best work together every day, and they feel like they belong there,
Right.
they're being included, and that they can fit and be their authentic self and bring their best authentic self every day, then you have the chance to have something really powerful and really magical. And even though we didn't use the words at the beginning of my Air Force journey at that time, that's what I experienced. It didn't matter where you were from, what you looked like, what you did. If you could bring your best and contribute, that was valued. And so that was very impressionable on me at the time. And today it's how I run this company, 7,000 people, global in nature. We talk about people are our most important asset. In fact, we have 4 values. Our leading value, number 1, is people first.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Here's the you talked about your memory, pretty good memory. You can memorize things. Well, mine's a little older, and so sometimes I'm a little more forgetful. When we first talked and we talked about your journey to get here to Edgewell and the steps along the way, if I'm remembering correctly, you wanted to come back to the academy and teach, and it just didn't work out. Is that right?
That is correct. That is a good memory, Vince. I was in the Department of Management, and I really loved my team there. I remember there was Major Steve Green at the time. He was a major, was probably the most impactful faculty member. on me, and I had the good fortune to graduate at a place where myself and a guy named Tom Drape, we were both sponsored out of the Department of Management to go on get our MBAs, with the idea that we would come back and teach and be faculty members. It just so happened to be at the time where the academy was moving away from an all-military faculty to begin the journey to become more of a civilian faculty.
Right.
And so when I called back and said, hey, I'm ready to come back for my next assignment, they said, we don't need you. Maybe call us in 10 years, because all the billets were being filled by civilians at that point. And so I wanted to come back and teach. I thought that would be an interesting part of my journey, but the Air Force had moved on, didn't need me to do that, needed me to do other things. And so I ended up never coming back to do that. But the advanced degree, I got an MBA in finance. Obviously, that's super helpful in what I did, following that. Just enabled me ultimately to be more successful in my professional journey outside of the Air Force, despite me not being able to go back and spend more time at the academy.
Talk about your journey to get to this point. So you couldn't go back and teach. They didn't need you at the time. Did you sit down with your wife at the time, or Janet, and say, what am I going to do? Or did it just all the cards fall into place? Talk about that journey from then until now.
Yeah. So when I went to the academy, I was thinking I wanted to be a pilot. I was pilot qualified. Came through in a year. I remember there was General Merrill McPeak was head of the Air Force at the time. And I remember he came on stage. We were at about 100 days out from graduation, and everybody finalizing what they were going to go do. And up to that point, it was unlimited pilot slots. If you were qualified and won a slot, you could go. And in my year, they capped it to 225 without forewarning or telling us. It was a big disappointment, being honest, with my class and how we viewed it. I was in the top 225 in class rank. I had my spot if I wanted it. I had my private pilot's license. I'd gone out with my roommate and some other guys out to Meadow Lake,
right,
out on the outskirts of town, and we got our private pilot's license out there and flew a lot. And flew out of state a lot, and so was really into it. But when I really reflected and looked at myself and said, was I passionate about flying? Did I come here really to fly, or did I come here to learn and contribute? It was much more the latter. And I was surrounded by guys and girls all around me at the time who came there to fly, and that's all they wanted to do. And so I thought, I'm not going to take someone's slot and do that. I had the nice opportunity to go get the continuing education in the MBA, so I chose that route. And that was probably the best decision I ever made, because I ended up going into systems acquisition. 6.3 was the code. Spent time at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, worked primarily on classified programs, early intelligence collection and dissemination, aircraft protection systems. Super cool, super interesting work. Met a lot of really interesting people and was given a lot of autonomy, actually, as a young military officer to influence things and have impact. But ultimately, I did get married to Janet. We were married 6 months after the academy, so I did have a family to start to think about. We had my first child when I was at Wright-Patterson, and the idea of having some stability with the family life was important to us. And so I left the Air Force in 1997, so I'd served the 5 years, and moved down the road. It wasn't even an official IRS tax-approved move, to Cincinnati from Wright-Patterson. I was on the south side of Dayton, and joined Procter & Gamble. At the time, the biggest and best consumer products company in the world. I was there for 17 years, learned a lot. It was an easy transition in, very disciplined, very hierarchical, like the Air Force. Had a lot of senior military leaders. In fact, the CEOs there for a long time. There was a West Point grad running the company. There was a senior Navy guy running the company at various times. So it felt like home, despite me not being in the military. It felt very familiar. So I was there 17 years, and I had a couple of stops in between my time at Procter & Gamble and coming to Edgewell. But I'll tell you a story. It's a good story. I think it speaks to the value of the experience at the Air Force Academy, and also speaks to the reputation of the Air Force Academy itself. When I was leaving Procter & Gamble, I was living in Geneva, Switzerland at the time, was over there with Procter. Had been there for 5 years. Had decided I was going to leave. And I had the opportunity to become a public company CFO for the first time. Those are very, very difficult jobs to get. First one. And the company was Elizabeth Arden. It was a beauty products company headquartered in New York City. And so I was moving the family back from Switzerland, ultimately to New Canaan, where we live now, and commuting into the city. And I met the CEO of the company. His name was Scott Beatty, as part of the process. And I remember I had a great interview with Scott. It was just like a discussion, like I was talking to a friend a bit. I mean, it was really, we were like-minded in terms of what he needed in the role and what I had and I could bring to the role. And we got done with the interview, and he said, "Rod, you know what I like best about you and your resume?" And I'm kind of racking my brain, like trying to give a smart answer. So I had recency bias. So I said, "Well, it must have been what I was doing last at Procter & Gamble. That must be why you want me." He said, "No, not at all." And he pointed down to my resume, and he pointed to the United States Air Force Academy and me graduating from there in 1992. He said, "That's the reason I'm hiring you. That's what I like best about your resume and what you bring." And it was a really powerful moment for me because I always knew in there that it really shaped and formed me in a way that you don't always understand. But he was telling me in that moment, that's what was most important to him as the CEO of a publicly traded company. And so I asked him, "Well, why?" And he said, "Well, I know you can follow directions. So when I tell you to do something, you'll shut up and do it. I know you'll be highly disciplined, and I know you'll be a good leader of the team. I need more leadership horsepower in the company. And so I'm counting on you to do all those three things." But that was really a powerful moment for me.
No doubt. And what a lesson. I think I would hope that happened to you. I would be willing to bet it's happened to others too, just because of those leadership characteristics. You listen, follow orders, and you're a good leader. Which leads me to the transition into you coming to Edgewell. This company, when you walk into the lobby, people might not know how many household products fall under your umbrella. Can you talk a little bit about being here, job here, and the product line that you all carry here at Edgewell?
Yeah, so it's a great company. It's a little bit like a mini Procter & Gamble. So in many ways, when the recruiter reached out to me to come here, it felt like I'd already done this on a bigger scale in a way, but without all the scale and all the things that you get from a big $80 billion company, which is what the revenue is for Procter & Gamble. We're a couple $1 billion revenue, so we're not small. Right. We're also not big, but we sell products all around the world. Over about half our sales come from outside the United States. My favorite brand in our portfolio is Hawaiian Tropic sun care brand. We have Banana Boat, so we're the number one sun care manufacturer in the U.S. with those two brands. We have Schick razors, Cremo, Bulldog, Jack Black, men's grooming lines. So we're if it happens in the bathroom, we play in that space. So as you get ready every morning, chances are somebody's going to have one of our products in the bathroom to help them get ready, look their best, feel their best every day. And then ultimately the sun protection business is important to me. The 3 million people a year get diagnosed with skin cancer in the United States alone. That number goes up, not down every year. I've had a couple of basal cell carcinoma spots that I've had to deal with. And, when I was a kid, the idea of using sunscreen just didn't exist, right? Or if it did, it was really a bad experience. It was white, it was thick, it was pasty. And the sunscreen products of today are not that at all. In fact, a lot of them are liquid, they're clear. There's no risk, despite what you read in some of the missives coming out of different parts of society today. They're very safe. And frankly, they protect people. And I think that's part of what we're proud of here too. So great product line, a great team running them. One of the things that I'm proud of what we've done here, We were just acknowledged last year as the second best company to work for in America in the mid-size category. So from 1 to 10,000 employees, we're number 2 out of every company you could choose to work for in America. And that's been something that we've been on a journey to earn. I think we're proud of it. And the thing that's nice, once you have that reputation, people know our brands and products. They know we're a people-first organization. It becomes much easier to recruit people in. We have people actually wanting to come here. When I first got here, you almost had to pull people in, and that's changed. And I think a lot of it goes back to leadership lessons, leadership principles, back to the academy, right? They're enduring.
And the teamwork. Love it. Do you see this kind of staying status quo, or would you like to add more products to the product line, or are you about where you think you need to be?
I think we've got big opportunity to grow, acquire more brands. This is a company that was put together via a series of acquisitions over time. And so as you look at our brand portfolio, they've all been acquired at some point. We've acquired 3 since I've been here. And so I think we'll look to acquire more. We generate a lot of cash flow. We try to run in a very disciplined manner in terms of our financial footprint to allow us to invest, to grow and build. It's a little difficult in this environment right now, to be honest, to say, hey, I'm going to lean in and spend, $1 billion on whatever the next brand is. I don't know that now's necessarily the moment for that, but we're using this moment to make sure that we're very disciplined, that when we're through the other side where there is clarity, then we'll be ready to lean in and go and make this company even bigger.
The great thing about my job is I get to see the CEO hat and the president hat that you wear, but I also get to see the philanthropic side of Rod Little and his family as well. Throughout the years, you've been philanthropic extremely to the United States Air Force Academy and us. You're a member of our board of directors, but you've also done it at Georgetown and other places. When did that click in, that being philanthropic, whether it's time, like what you're spending with us today, or financially, when did that kick in and become important to you?
Actually, when I was at the academy, I knew that what the academy was giving to me as a person was unique and special. Right? I knew that. They had a program at the time where you could join the AOG and have a certain amount of money deducted every month. In my class, they actually gave us the ability to unenroll from the AOG, take that money, and it happened to be around spring break of our senior year.
Right. I see where this is going.
Yeah, and so at the time, it seemed like a good idea to unenroll, pull that money back out, have some spending cash. To go do some fun things with my friends. But I knew that was a mistake. And so when I did graduate, I rejoined immediately upon graduation. I think it was a 2-year time frame you could do it to have the auto deduction. So I made it a priority to join the AOG immediately upon graduation. And then as I was able financially, I've got 3 children. We didn't have a lot of money along the way, right? As I was kind of making my way, you know what second and first lieutenants make. I know you have one in the household. Times were tight, and my wife was a teacher in the early days, and then at some point chose to stay home with our children. So as I had the wherewithal, I always felt like it was a personal responsibility to give back when and how I could, as I could.
When you look at the impact you're making and our board of directors is making, you joined the board a couple of years ago. You sit on the athletic committee. You're part of the executive committee. How do you see that in your role and our board helping the academy? It's a big board, I'll admit that, but the committees are very functional within that framework. How do you see this moving forward and just benefiting cadet programs, benefiting things that are happening in the academic side of the academy or athletic side?
Yeah, look, I think the work that the foundation, the association, AOG, back getting to this single leadership structure, in my view, is critically important. As we talked, I was a Falcon Foundation recipient. I love that. I benefited from that. My view is, and was, it shouldn't be a separate entity, right? You lose efficiency and effectiveness. And so as all the lanes started to come together under a single leadership umbrella, I got really excited about that in terms of the power we could have coming together as a single group. And now, a couple of years into the foundation as a director, I see the power of it. It's a very impressive group of people. At starting point, people in some of the highest levels of power in Washington have either been there or still actively can influence. To people like me who have nothing to do really with the military anymore on a daily basis, but just care and want the academy to be a better place. And so I think it's a super powerful group from what I've seen in terms of having consistency, not only of thought leadership, but financial stewardship as an umbrella over the academy at a time when things are very uncertain.
Absolutely.
At a time when you, rightly so, have a revolving door of leaders going through.
Yeah.
As administrations change, as superintendents and commandants change, you can have some changing direction in terms of kind of where our academy is going to go and how it's going to operate. But we now have a really strong, powerful umbrella on top of all of that, really helping with the stewardship of the future of where the academy is going to go. And it's not just words on paper. It's real action and activity, whether it be the stadium renewal, which I think is pretty fantastic, with the Jack Kuchera donation into that. The new Hosmer Visitor Center, actually accessible when it opens. When it's accessible, off of 25, that's going to be a big revenue driver. The Polaris Hotel is amazing, right? So the infrastructure that we have been able to help shepherd through, get put in place to create at some point an economic stream that I think is going to be pretty powerful is one element of it. But then I think, more tangibly, staying very close to the honor code, the principles of what it means to be a cadet, the Institute of Future Conflict, influencing, who's the future war going to be with, and then what's the curriculum and what's the experience cadets are having while they're there. Again, there's some of the smartest people I know are helping shape that as part of this foundation and committee. And without this group doing it, who would do it?
Exactly. Well, we want to thank you too for your philanthropic support, being a part of this board of directors. That in itself is, it's priceless, Rod. So thank you for that. Rod has been gracious to join us today for this podcast. And I know you're watching of it. He might be tired. He was on a plane pretty much all day yesterday, coming back from London just so he could be with us. So I've done a lot of talking here. Thank you again for being here. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap this up?
No, Vince, just thank you for including me and having me be part of this. As I said earlier, I was given a gift of admission to the Air Force Academy, and I didn't always feel that way when I was there. I think that's pretty common. But as I look back on it, I'm grateful for my time there, what I've learned there. And I credit the Academy for most of what I have today in life beyond my family, professionally.
Well, I've said it a million times. The Long Blue Line it's a unique fraternity, and you're a part of that fraternity. And I'm not a part of that fraternity. I have a kid that went to school there, but I see it all the time. And I couldn't imagine working any place else and getting to work with people like yourself, our other board members. I'm in Connecticut, visiting with grads and parents on this trip, and wonderful people. Thanks, Rod. Appreciate your time today. Well, that's all we have for today. I want to thank Rod again for joining us. And before we wrap up, I also want to extend my sincere thanks to each and every one of you for supporting the Air Force Academy and the Sabre Society. Without that generous support, the Air Force Academy Fund would be in trouble. So thank you so much for helping and with all of your support in forging leaders of our great nation. Thanks, everybody. Until next time, we'll see you later.